the dirty water, the muddy banks, the vegetation growing through it all, the broken trees. These are just some features of a swamp, and that is what we're going to try recreate on our miniature bases today. So let's get into that video and see how it comes out. Okay, so for this base here, what we're going to do is I want to come in and use some texture paste. Now for a lot of my bases I use sort of just sand and gravel from my driveway to get the base foundation. However, for this one I don't want to do that. I want to use some actual texture paste, so I've got something to sculpt with here and give me some nice sort of texture here, because I'm going for sort of the edge of like a muddy bank into the area of the swamp with the water in there. So that's how I want to accomplish that, and the best way to do that is going to be using texture paste here and sculpt out something that I can really do. Now if you don't have anything like that, you could still sort of pull this off with some sand and stuff. You just have to sort of layer it up with the glue, let it dry, then layer it up. Be a bit more difficult, get a lot more of an uneven surface. Another thing you could also use is some like air drying clay to create your sort of bank you want to, but I find the easiest way would be texture paste here. It's really nice and easy to sculpt with. You can build it up. It takes a little while to dry, but it does give a good effect in the end. Okay, so now you've got your base sculpted to how you want it with your bank lined up. We can paint it now. Now, what I've done is, because this is slightly different color, I actually primed over it. I just wanted to keep it all uniform, make sure all the paint stick to it. With texture paste, you don't need to worry about that too much. Usually you can apply paint to texture paste nice and easily, but it was in case I missed any little bits where I've got my very low bottom of the swamp, because little bits got to be used. Well, one important thing too I forgot to mention when applying the texture paste on here, if you are like me, you actually do want to apply it on all over the surface and then build up the bank on top of that, so you've actually got a little bit of texture underneath there when we place our water effects on later, so you can sort of see the bottom of that bank. It looks a little bit nicer than if you were just to have the flat plain base of the bottom of it. So just something to watch out for there, and add in that little extra effect to make it look a little bit more realistic. So once we had painted up that base, I just used a plain old dark brown, as you could easily see there. What I've actually gone and done is I've gone and grabbed a little bit of a branch and just broken off a small stick, and I want to use this. I want to have a broken tree that's sort of falling from the bank into the water of the swamp here. So I'm just going to go through and carefully place this down, which, as you can see, turns into a bit of a pain. Here I probably should have broken it off first, but I was a little bit worried as I was snapping the branch here to get it to the size I wanted to, where I could glue it down. I was actually having a problem that it was breaking up a little bit too much, so what I ended up by doing was, as you can see here, is gluing it to the base and then actually having to come in with a pair of scissors and cut it on there properly, so I wasn't going to get so much of a break and I wasn't going to damage too much of the branch itself. Now you totally could done this. This here of course is an added extra feature on here that's just going to help take it to the next level. You honestly wouldn't need to do this. This base is actually quite nice and simple to do. I wanted to add in a little bit more flair and sort of style to the actual base here, so that's why I wanted to make it look like there was a small tree or a little bit of vegetation growing here that's broken off and fallen into the swamp. It's quite a classic scene to see in swamps, where you see the broken branches and trees and everything sort of lying in amongst the mud and all throughout the water. It just adds on to that effect just so much more. And you can see here I've gone for posing it nicely to make it look very interesting. I cut it down just a little bit more there as well, but giving it that good overall look. And then I'm going to glue it together. Now one thing with this one, this branch I have is sort of like very, very hollow, so I needed to stiffen that up. So I just gave it an entire coating with the super glue, so it was going to stiffen up and I wasn't going to have it accidentally sort of break on me in future use if I use it as a base for my miniatures as well. So good thing to harden up. One thing too is you want to make sure the branch that you're using for this, if you're doing it like me, is that it's clean. Maybe you want to stick it into a oven for a few seconds on a low heat to try and kill off any bugs or anything in that. For me, I know this one was been sitting out for a long time, so nothing's wrong with that, so I could add it to the base. Then once I had that glued on and got it how I wanted it, I'm going to come in and do some dry brushing now. This was something I should have done probably before placing the actual tree that I have here fallen down on, so I got a better overall dry brushing, but I sort of came up with it sparing of the moment with the branch idea, and so I put it on straight away without thinking. So if you were doing it a little bit better than I am, you'd probably want to dry brush it first before adding any vegetation to your base or anything like that. But it's just a good, nice, simple dry brush with, of course, a lighter brown over top. Now, I'm only focusing this on the actual bank itself. I don't want it for the area where we're going to have our water effects. I want to keep that nice swampy and dark looking, so we don't want to add any highlights to that. We're just adding it to the top, so you can see there's a little bit of area where the sun gets and dries out just a little bit of that bank. And then once we have that dry brushing done, what I'm going to do now is come in with a wash. I'm using strong tone for this. This of course is a brown wash, and I'm just going to be focusing the brown wash onto the area of our bank of our swamp. I'm not going to be placing it in where we're going to be putting our water effects later on. I want to have it different color and overall wash effect, so that's why I'm going with the brown just on the surface as well as that too. I also decided not to paint the little branch that I had on here representing the tree. I thought it looked great how it was, but you could totally paint in your branch to give it a more cohesive look over the entire thing, so just keep that in mind as we're placing the wash on here. And this is one time where we do actually want it to pull. And then while our brown wash was being placed on here, I decided to go straight in here with a green wash. Now this is one thing where I did the wash and I wasn't happy with the entire color that it came out with, so I'll be changing it in a later step, but I wanted to show you the process anyway of something that you could do, or maybe you like the effect that it's given off so far. I just wasn't happy with the way it dried. It just didn't dry green enough, because as you can see I went with a green wash here, so I wanted to be a bit more green. I wanted to make it look like a very sort of stereotypical sort of swamp with that green water, and for me placing the green tone over top of it just didn't give me the color I wanted, so I go in and change it in the next step. But I thought it'd be interesting to show you the process anyway and see if you did like it yourself, but also just want to show in some little mistakes here or things I'm not happy with, just so you know what I've been through to make these things. And then as you can see, I was looking here and I could see it here before it was completely dry. I decided I'm going to come in with a green contrast paint that's got way more vibrancy in the color there, so I decided to apply it off. As you can see, the green tone wash that I placed on here wasn't even completely dry yet, but I could see where it was drying and I just wasn't happy with the color, so that's why I came in with a contrast paint. So this is a great reference for you too. Remember, you can always change something as you're doing it. If you're not entirely happy with the result, you don't have to follow everything I do here, but you can also make up your own judgment with, if there's a color on something you don't like, you can easily change it and it's not a hard process. Okay, so now we have the sort of bulk and the main thing that's going to turn this into a swamp. We've got our good base here, and now what it is we want to come in with a bunch of different tufts and we want to place them on our base. We want that vegetation in our swamp to be growing, be vibrant and rich through there, and really be throughout the entirety of the base. And I'm just of course using some glue here so I can stick these tufts down so they're more permanent than the glue that comes on the tufts. I find sometimes when you place a tuft on that it's straight from one of these sheets of tufts, that sometimes they can peel up and the glue's not very sticky, so I always like to make sure I glue them down. And as you can see here, I've gone for different heights of tufts as well. That's also one good thing to do, especially when you're getting a swamp here. You got various different types of vegetation growing throughout these areas, so I've come in with a couple of different colors, a couple of different styles and textures to give a really interesting look. And you can see here I've got these nice really tall ones that I want to be growing up through the area in the actual water itself, so you can see them shooting up and you got these long grassy reed sort of thing here. One thing to note too, these long ones that I've got here growing through the water, if you don't actually have any tufts available to you, what you could actually use is an old paintbrush. You can buy the ones from sort of like the dollar store and stuff like that, and you could just very carefully trim off the ends of the actual brush itself and use them as some nice long stalky tufts. I thought that was quite a cool idea. I was thinking about it as I was painting it up. I thought, hey, these look very much like some brushes I have right next to me here that I use to paint with and apply on here. So if you don't have access to a lot of tufts, that could be a way to go with that as well. But I have quite a big collection of tufts, so I like to use them, and especially since we're going for this nice overgrown swamp look, I want to use a bunch of them here. And you can see I've got some green ones here that I'm just coming up. I'm going to use some that look like little shrubs. These are great ones that I don't get to use too often, that I should use a little bit more. I really do enjoy them, and I think they look really good here. So it looks like you've got a couple of bushes, you've got these nice reeds growing up through the water, and you've got these nice thick green clumps here, and it's just a matter of placing them out however you want. This is totally up to you where you want to place them. You just don't want to make them look a little too uniform, so you want to maybe like an odd number of them, a couple of different colors if you've got it, especially for our swamp. It's going to really help set it apart and make it look unique and sort of realistic. Then once we have that complete, it is time to do our water effects. Now I'm going to keep this water effect nice and super simple so anyone can do it. And for me, is going to be Mod Podge is what I'm going to use here. This here is the glossy variant of Mod Podge. I usually use the matte version. So distinct difference there between the two is, of course, one is going to dry shiny and the other one's going to, of course, dry flat. So you want something that's going to dry shiny. Now PVA glue is also going to be a great substitute here. PVA glue has a glossy finish on there, probably not as much as this gloss Mod Podge here, but it's still going to give you that glossy finish. So if you're sort of working on a budget and you don't have much, PVA glue is going to do great here. Or another thing you could do is use a glue on top of it and go with a gloss varnish as well. You could also just paint gloss varnish on top of the area. That would give us a little effect. Now I wanted to, of course, add in the water effects here. Now sometimes I also too use an actual water effect, like the Vallejo water effects paint there, the still water. I didn't use that for this one, is because I haven't been happy with it lately. Is I find it always tries to seep out away from where you place it. It also, you can't layer it very well on there too. It gives very degrees of separation. It's just the problem that I've been having with it myself. They're totally probably unique to me, but I just wanted to keep it nice and simple, so I decided to go with the gloss Mod Podge in here, and I think it's going to look great when it dries. So let's get into those glamour shots and see how it came out, shall we? And with all that complete, we have finally finished creating our swamp base for our miniatures. Now this base is going to be good whether you want to use it on a single miniature to show it off, or you want to use it over across an entire army of miniatures. I think it would look very cool and give you something interesting to look at on the base of your miniature. Really give it a scene to be a part of, and I think it would look great on any type of miniature that you want to have exploring through a swamp, especially with adding in all that vegetation and having our water effects there. It's going to really help make your miniature stand out on the tabletop. But with all that said, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.